Okay, and I've got to go live on Instagram. Oh, damn, my Instagram feed got it busted when I came out of there. All right, we are live. Hello, world. It is good to see you. There we are.
We're here.
We're here. The Soul of Business Experience.
Yeah, we're definitely here. It's Thursday. Glad everybody could join us. Thank you for doing it. And good to see you, Dr. Bartlett. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Good to see you. This is going to be a very interesting conversation. You and I will have a conversation, but it will spill over into the listening audience with any good fortuitous luck at all. That's the intent here. So welcome everybody that's watching.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Normally Thursdays at this time we do Power You, but we wanted to take the time just to talk about the components of what the soul of a business is.
And part of what that is about is, the work that Doland and I do is about bringing aliveness, sustainable aliveness into organizations. Because when aliveness is present, there's a vibrancy. You can feel it when you walk into an office or a shop or something like that, where everything is just clicking. And you can feel it. It's kind of like, oh, this is kind of cool. There's a buzz. And it's kind of like, I'm going to come back here. Your favorite restaurant. It can even be a dry cleaner. I've got a dry cleaner that we go to that I just love going there because just the way the people are. They are tapping into something. They're not just doing a job. They're tapping into something that's important, that's meaningful in some way, shape, or form. That is bringing aliveness, and they get creative. If I've got a problem, it's kind of like, well, I can't handle that. You're on your own. They're going to go, yeah, right. This is in order for us to be effective at what we do as a business, we're going to handle that problem. We're going to find a way to make it work. That taps into the soul of the business, and that is being able to sustain that and to open the door to that is something that leaders have to know today. They absolutely have to know it, and you can't command it.
Yeah, that's so important because it is one of the, and we'll spend some time today talking about that a little bit. But the fact that without that soul of business, you can't get to your destination. You can't get to the end unless you understand that.
Yep. So we're going to be going, we've got, some slides that we're going to be using here just for visual reference, but don't want you to get hung up on the slides. This isn't a webinar. I want to disabuse people of thinking certain things right now.
Right.
This isn't a training program. We're not pitching anything. Doland and I both have been doing leadership development work for over 40 years apiece. So we've got, bumping 100 years of collective experience. I've seen more water go under the bridge than I can probably account for. And at this stage in our lives, it's important for us that leaders know how to lead well, because what we leave behind makes a difference. And business is the most pervasive force on the planet. There is nothing in this world that is not touched by the activity of business, for ill or for good. And too often today, it's for ill, not for good. So leaders have a responsibility in that. And I really do believe that, there's a place for business to take responsibility for the whole. And I literally mean that. Take responsibility for the whole. Don't rely on governments. Business crosses boundaries, political, geographic, financial boundaries. You've got a responsibility as a business owner to make a difference, a positive difference.
Yeah, that's very important. So let's get going. Let's do this.
So we'll just jump into it here. So why leadership feels heavier than it should, and it does feel heavy sometimes. That's kind of an interesting way to think about things here. And it's not a signal that you're doing anything wrong necessarily. It's just that there's more and more demands. When you look around the world, when you look around your business, there's a lot of changes occurring. And the pace of change is accelerating. It's not slowing down. You got AI coming in. You've got all kinds of stuff going on. And the load gets heavier. How do I navigate this? And it's not an indication that anything's broken necessarily. It's just an
No,
indication that things are stacking up. Things are
no, and
stacking up.
I think one of the things too, the blind that when we work with our clients, and in the mastermind group, one of the things that we find is a lot of that heaviness, that feel of the heaviness is unspoken. As a leader, we tend not to want to speak. We don't want to speak into that because
Right.
I'm a leader, therefore I must suck it up.
Yep.
To use it, that's a technical term, by the way.
Suck it up. So, way we're going to have some fun with this too. So,
Yeah,
we tend to be a little irreverent in the way that we go about doing stuff. So,
can be,
bear with
and as you can
us.
tell, it's well rehearsed, so we're off.
And if you're easily offended, yeah, welcome to the game.
Yeah, here we are. Here we are.
Okay. So, what we're looking at here is the fact that that tension gets subtle. I mean, things start to creep up, and all of a sudden we look up one day and we
Yeah,
go, "This just doesn't feel good." And and you look around and you notice decision making is kind of becoming difficult to do.
yeah,
Energy starts to go flat. There's a little indication that there's misalignment someplace. Things start to wobble just a little bit as you go down the road. Not an indication that you did anything wrong as a leader. You probably were doing everything right or correct, but
yeah,
everything starts to stack up and the system can't hold the load.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
kind of what we're dealing with that.
And that feeling stays with you.
Yeah. So when we're looking through that lens, most leadership pain doesn't feel like failure. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it just we start to normalize experience because it's so slow. We start to normalize it, and interestingly, high performers, people that are really tuned in, begin to notice this first. It's kind of like if you're a high performer, you are really tuned into nuance and you start feeling things before your brain registers it in a cognitive way where it's objectified. It's kind of like, yeah, it
yeah,
just feels a little bit off here. Yeah.
yeah.
And
I think that's an important statement about the high performers, because that's we see that over and over and over with the leaders that we talk to. And then
yeah,
what happens, I think, when they're in that situation is there's that growth as the business grows or scales, whichever the result that you're seeking, because it's two different kind of results, business results. But as you're doing that, responsibility tends to weigh heavier and creates more pain than clarity. So there starts to be a gap between those two. Growth creates more responsibility and clarity starts to suffer.
yeah. And that becomes a problem. And we're going to be, kind
Yeah,
of diving into this a little bit because there's both the identification of what the issue is, but also, what are some solutions? And that's one of the things that we want to be able to drop in here. And it has
right.
to do, in large part, I'll just kind of uh, tease the frame a little bit here, but it has to do with how we think about things. Our
That's a
thinking.
good tease. That's a great tease. Yeah,
So
and go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I'm just going to say for leaders, that pain can show up in a number of different ways here. Yeah, you're still performing, you're still growing, but it's getting heavier and heavier. And it's not a question of doing more. Yes.
No,
Don't mention the word scaling. Um, we don't scale by doing more, doing what we're doing harder or faster.
right.
Okay. That's not the answer to scaling in the way that is going to be sustainable over time. So we want to start taking a look at this through a different lens. We got to think about it in a little bit different fashion. And it's not about capability, it's about the system that you're operating in. Does it fit? Does it work for what you're trying to have occur? And that is
Yeah.
a leadership question.
Yeah, I love that statement because I think when we're in this mode as leaders, and I've been in this mode as an executive inside of organizations, you're still working, which is performing. You're working, the team's working, you're still focused on growing, but no matter what you do, that model, something has changed. And when it changed, everything's, you're moving, but everything feels heavy. And if you're connected, and particularly, and I love your comment from the previous slide, Blaine, around high performing leaders. When you're a high performing leader and you're really in tune, it's heavier.
Yeah.
The trick is, why is it heavier?
Yeah, we do some work in our mastermind program around the nature of flow states. And
Yes.
when you're in flow, you're actually connected in a way to what it is that's going on around you that allows you to notice things before they actually trip you up. And that's what we want to be able to curate with as a leader. We want to be able to learn how to do that effectively. And that is
Right.
Systemic awareness.
Right.
Notice the system.
Yeah.
And Dolan mentioned as a senior executive, him as a senior executive. I think it'd be appropriate. Some of you that are watching this may not know who we are.
Yeah.
Which, why would we listen to these, old white middle-aged guys, old and middle-aged, old white-haired guys? Well, as I mentioned on the front end here, we've got close to 100 years of collective experience between us as senior executives in numbers of different organizations. So, Dolan, I'll let you just riff a little bit about yourself, and then I'll touch
on we have an hour. We have an hour, so I'll take the rest of the hour and just
take as much time as you need in the next 60 seconds to tell me everything about it.
In the next, tell me all you want in 60 seconds. In the next, so just very quickly, I'm Doland White, and probably the only Doland. Well, there is another Doland on LinkedIn, but I'm the only Doland that you'll meet in this today. But after more than 40 years, I've been a chief operating officer, chief executive officer in organizations, and work with teams that have either impacted or influenced a little over $1 billion in revenue. And what I focus on in partnership with Blaine is, how do we combine that experience with the intention to help leaders not accelerate their careers? How do we help leaders get to that end through the lessons that we've learned practically through a model that's current with what business is really all about today? And that's my introduction. Yeah. Mr. Bartlett?
I've been working in leadership development around the world globally for 44 years, 45 years now. I'm an adjunct professor at Beijing University, and specifically my focus is on cultural development. I've lectured at Tsinghua University in China on enterprise leadership, large organizational leadership. I led Nokia's global leadership initiative, or part of it, for about 12 years as an external consultant. I've been working in leadership development fields, or in the field of leadership development, for decades. I've, startups, Fortune 20 companies, C-suites, right down to founders. One thing that I've noticed in that 40 plus years is that leadership is leadership is leadership. I don't care what the size of the organization is. And I say that in this sense. It's all about relationship. All an organization is, and this is the one thing, if there's one thing that I've learned in 45 years, every organization has one thing in common: people. Yeah. Everything in an organization is organized around relationships. And if the relationships are working well, you got a pretty good shot at being successful. And here's where it gets kind of nuanced. The obvious one is the relationship with people. But people have relationships with vision, with values, with structure, with process, parking places, chairs, computers. All of these things have relational dynamics to it. And whenever change is introduced into a system, the problem with the change isn't the change. The problem with the change is the disruption to existing relationships. And most leaders are not schooled in how to manage, curate, and facilitate the creation and sustainability of high quality relationships. That's why you start taking the load on. That's why it starts to feel ouch. Yeah, as you're going through the day. It's a relational question. So over 45 years, this is what this is that's an area that I particularly pay attention to. What's the qualitative nature of the relationships in all of their forms in your organization? That's where you're going to have leverage. So that's who we are. That's who I am. And when we're starting to take a look at this, yeah, we're going to just
Yeah,
jump right back into this in the hour that we've got with you. We don't want to, belabor things for too long here.
we're gonna go quick. Take notes.
Yeah. So, Dr. White?
No, I love this slide. We assume the problem is effort, skill, or discipline, and one of the conversations we have frequently is when we're in that mode as an executive or as a leader inside of any organization, and there's lots of layers of leadership in the body of most companies, right? Um, we have a tendency to assume that when I see this problem, I'm going to double down on effort. I'm going to do more. I'm going to increase. I'm going to do more measures, more meetings, more calls. As a matter of fact, leaders, open your calendar, take a look inside of your Outlook calendar or your Gmail calendar, your Google calendar, and take a look at the number of meetings where you're in trying to work through problems, efforts, skill, measures, meters, decisions. And that's a symptom, that's an indicator that you're turning up the pressure more.
Yeah. And part of the reason that happens, because and I like this particular slide because it's a nature slide. Nature has seasons, and
Yeah.
each season has a unique flavor to it. And if, as a leader, I'm not paying attention to the seasonality in my business, in my organization, there literally is a summer, fall, winter, spring component to the ways that organizations are put together. We have
Yeah.
relationships with these different seasonalities. In the summertime, things are just cooking with gas. And as a leader, you can basically just kind of go, you guys got it. When it starts to move into fall, autumn, things start, the leaves start to drop. The color goes off the tree just a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, those sorts of things start to occur. And if you're not paying attention, that's where it starts to feel like you're stacking. It's kind of like something's off here. What is it? And if you're not particularly attentive to it, you enter the winter state, which is, boy, and this is not just, if you're not paying attention to it, if something happens externally that just completely derails. AI is a great example of this in some ways, where it really requires a reconfiguration, a complete rethinking about who we are and how we go to market. That's a winter phase. A completely different leadership demands come into play there. You move into springtime, and the leadership function changes because now you're encouraging experimentation. What if, what if, what if, what if, what if? How could we? Can we do? Those sorts of exploratory junkets need to be encouraged because at some point you'll land exactly on where you're going to be, leveraging, and you move back into spring or into summertime again. So there's a seasonality to the way that business unfolds. There's a seasonality that leaders need to pay attention to. It's not about effort. It's not about skill. It's not about discipline. It's about awareness. It's about how we think about who we are and what we're doing. That's what we're looking at with this.
yeah. Such a good point with businesses and seasons and when we kind of think about it, kind of heading into this topic, right, about leadership hasn't failed, your operating model expired. I love that word, expired, because as a leader, I think there's a propensity when you're in that hot seat and you're thinking it's me. And in a lot of cases, it's not you. It is the operating model that you're trying to run, and that operating model has expired. You've not moved on, or you're missing pieces of that operating model that can get you to the other side. Because when you and I talk about this a lot inside of the work that we do, what got us here today won't get us there tomorrow, which is a common, those of you watching this, that's a common statement in leadership, right? In business, what got me here won't get me there tomorrow. If I'm not innovating, I'm dying. little colloquialisms that go in it. But it means that operating system, the operating didn't fail on you. It expired.
Mhm. And what's replacing it? I mean, the milk has gone bad. What do we do now?
Right. Exactly. And that's the trick. I think that's that thing on not getting hung up on, oh, it's my fault. So now what? If the milk
Yeah,
has gone bad, what do we do?
yeah, it is what it is. Harvest the good that we had. Let's move on. What do we need to let go of? Forgive everything else and just and it has to do with connecting. We go back to the whole notion of aliveness. It has to do with connecting
Yeah.
yourself and your people to something that Dolan and I, work with, which is called the for the sake of what. Now, Simon
Yeah.
Sinek talks about the why. The for the sake of what is a much deeper cut on that question of why do we exist. For the sake of what gets personal. And when it gets personal, now you have opportunity for people to use their imaginations to actually tap into something that matters to them. For the sake of what are you doing this? For the sake of what are we setting off in this direction? For the sake of what
Yeah.
makes a big difference in
Yeah.
being able to get reinvigorate the model. It has expired. It needs to have something happen that will be different. That's what we're looking for here. Literally that. Every level of scale requires a different way of leading. And as you're scaling your organization, it's not a straight line trajectory.
No.
Plateau, plateau, plateau.
Yeah. It's so interesting you say that because one of the things and you were just talking about this, leaders, as you're listening to this, think back to when Blaine was talking a couple of slides ago on the weather slide around seasonality of your business. You scale differently by seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Things change by seasons. And when you do that as you scale through the seasons, the rules change. There must be a different approach. And
Yeah.
it becomes that requires that you need to think differently, act differently, integrate differently into your business, different models, different frames that help you through that place where you're scaling, through that season that you're in.
See, and here's the challenge with leaders or for leaders is we all have preferred ways of behaving, of doing things, of thinking. And we
Yeah.
do a real simple exercise here. You cross your arms. Just go ahead and cross your arms. Those of you that are watching right now, just cross your arms. Great. You know how to do that. No question. Okay. Now cross your arms the other way. Yeah, it's kind of okay. That's a
I
little
still
awkward.
can't.
I still can't do it. Okay. It's awkward. It's not patterned. It's not habituated. It's not something that I'm comfortable doing. But it's the environment now requires this form rather than this form.
Right.
Complexity increases faster than control can keep up. And if you've got a mindset that says leadership is about command and control, I'm the leader, I'm going to tell you what to do. Those are patterned ways of responding. They are historically based. This is how leadership has always been thought of. Control will be the anchor that will keep you and your organization from going where you want to go. Complexity cannot, what's the word I'd use here? You cannot thrive in a complex environment when you're trying to control things. It just won't work.
No,
There
but
has to be a different way of doing it.
I love that point because control feels comfortable.
Yeah. Yep.
Control is comfortable. I told them what to do.
And control will be your worst enemy. I guarantee it.
That moment of comfort will haunt you for quite a while.
For quite a while here. So when the model doesn't fit, interesting things start to happen here. You get friction. Yeah. When your existing model, and this is, when you're paying attention to things, you start noticing that there's some resistance that starts to build into this system. And friction, there's a number of different labels we can use here: conflict, resistance, that sort of stuff. But it's basically where stuff starts to get tough to move.
Mm-hmm.
When that's going on, you can almost always assume that there's a breakdown in trust somewhere. Either trust in the system, trust in the leader, trust in people's ability to do things that they're being asked to do. I mean, all kinds of stuff comes into play. When trust is in question, decisions become waffly. You're not getting the kind of information you need to make sound decisions you can go
Yeah.
to with. And if that's the case, then you're going to be looping back into having to push the river. And there's a lot of effort in that, trying to move things that don't want to go where you wants to go, where you want it to go. And then we try to use leverage. I'm the boss, do what I say, sort of a thing. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's funny because you look at that flow, and then through all of that. And but by the way, I want to go back. I'm going to harken back to something you just said about friction, right? And friction is friction. One thing leaders that we see there's a propensity in leadership to have a desire to eliminate friction.
Yeah.
There's a desire, I must eliminate friction. And actually, and we'll talk a little bit further about this just to offer another tease for more, but it is actually more important that friction exists. Because you can't move without that friction. But through all of these things, and I love the way you kind of framed it, Blaine, with trust, decisions, effort, but that last piece with leverage fails, that's where control raises its head again.
Yep.
So leverage has failed, therefore I must take control.
And at that point in time, people emotionally disengage and they look to you to fix it. And the weight becomes heavier.
Yeah.
The weight becomes heavier.
And then you wake up in the morning and look in your calendar and go, what happened?
Oops.
Oops. I'm going to call my wife and cancel that dinner because I'm not coming home.
Yeah. And the house of cards just collapsed.
Yeah. So this is a gateway slide. We're going to take a couple of minutes to talk about these three ways to lead and what it means, and then we're going to bring it all together here in a little bit. But we're going to spend a moment or two just talking about excellence, genius, and soul, and why these three components of leadership matter to you.
And these actually come into play when we start looking at leadership through the lens of influence rather than command and control.
Yeah.
How do you influence another? That's what we're going to be looking at here.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only other tease I'll give you is as we kind of head into this leaders, and we're talking about these three things, they are all three things that integrate together.
Yep.
And we'll get into that why.
Yeah. So for the sake of exploration and explanation, we break them out. But
we do.
They are part and parcel of influence structures.
It sounds like three things, but no, it's not. So let's start with excellence. So excellence, when we think about what excellence is disciplined execution and reliability. Excellence is the foundation that makes growth, trust, and scale possible. For those of you that didn't read the slide, it includes things, systems, accountability. Accountability is, I gotta say it. Accountability is not a spreadsheet or a Trello board or Monday.com or Asana. Accountability is a mutual agreement between people to move confidently together towards a common outcome. A committed agreement. So we commit to and with each other to that end. And so excellence gives you that framework, the beginning of that framework to create trust, to move to growth, and then to move scale and to make that possible. And that's where excellence lives inside of the body of your organization. And as a leader, that's your first place where you're starting. This is where you earn trust and you can begin to scale responsibility and scale accountability.
What's interesting about excellence as one of the elements of influencing, it has to do with the notion that everybody has a story about them. People make up stories about who you are as a leader, what's important to you, what do you pay attention to, what can I count on you for? I mean, all of that stuff. It's all embedded in what we call the story of self. And that story gets in the room, gets in the meeting, gets into people's minds before you ever physically show up. So they aren't really dealing with you. They're dealing with the story of you, Their relationship isn't with you. Their relationship is with the story of you. When we're working with excellence as one of the ways that leaders actually function, what you're doing is you're actually curating the story, because you're showing up consistently in a manner that says, here's what's important. There's integrity embedded in it. There's consistency embedded in it. There's confidence embedded in it. All of these things are attributes of somebody performing, showing up, living a life that is excellent, living a self that is excellent. So, you think about that in that way, it begins to take on a little bit different life than just words on a piece of paper or words on a slide deck.
Yeah. You love that, especially what do we do? We do excellence. What does that mean? I don't know.
Yep.
Let's explore that just a little
Let's
bit.
explore that a little bit, which is where genius kind of comes into play. It's the
Right.
ability to see patterns. Yeah, when Dolan and I are talking about the system, it's not about you have to do things harder and smarter. That's not what it's about. It's about noticing what the system is actually generating that will either allow access to or block access to what we call the spirit or the soul of the business. And when we're talking about patterns, again, cross your arms. That is a habituated way of behaving. Study after study after study consistently shows that 95% of a leader's behavior, 95% of everybody's behavior, really,
Yeah.
is generated out of the subconscious mind, things that we have wired together such that we don't have to think about it. These are patterns. You get up on the same side of the bed every morning. You go to your favorite cup to pour your coffee, and you brush your teeth with the same hand. I mean, these are all patterned ways of executing life done in a way that I don't have to think about it. And these patterns served me at one point in time. This is why when we're looking at leadership, what got me here won't get me there. Seasons change, different requirements come into play. And if I'm not aware of the patterns that are operating, things start to go off the rails pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is see patterns, because it begins to simplify complexity.
Yeah. I
And
love
go ahead.
I love that. Just in one of the things I think that's really important in leaders as you're listening that there's a law, right? Which is when you're simplifying complexity, you move towards clarity.
Mhm.
And when you move towards clarity and you have clarity in place, you create confidence. There's an equation between those three C's. And you end up with confidence in the organization. And because of and you touched on this at the beginning of the slide, what happens, I think, and kind of a little bit inside of the excellent slide too, is when you show up without the clarity, people will begin to make up their own stories.
Yeah. Yeah. You are not in charge of the story any longer. This isn't about control. It's about the
No.
organic way that story emerges. You want to be in front of the story, not behind, trying to play catch up. I must hasten after them, for I am their leader.
Perfect here.
Yes.
And you can DM us and we'll tell you where that came from. That's a perfect statement. But it's true, because I think from a genius perspective, when you move towards that clarity and those insights, leaders, you'll begin to notice that feeling we talked earlier about more. I'm going to double down. I'm going to have more meetings, more measures, more. You're less focused on force, more focused on insights.
Yep. And that makes all the difference in the world. And insight begins to replace command and control, begins to replace effort, begins to replace force as the
Right.
way that you move the organization. Leaders cause movement. That's the simplest way you can think about leaders and leadership. Leaders cause movement.
Yeah.
Everybody's a leader. And think about that. Just you're always causing movement of some kind. Not everybody's effective at getting the kind of movement they need to get the result that they say that they want. This is a question of effectiveness, and effectiveness requires genius to be able to see. It requires excellence as a foundation. It requires actually being able to tap into the soul of the business. And that's, kind of how all of this influencing stuff begins to come together. Yeah, you lead from an aligned sense of purpose, where values and actions. What I see is what I get, sort of a deal here. There's a coherency. There's a an aligned way of moving not only yourself but your organization through the troubled waters of your marketplace, and that generates all kinds of stuff. Trust coming to mind more than anything else. Yeah, your leadership becomes lighter. It's more human. You're actually you're connecting to people.
Yeah. And I love that because a lot of times I think, and we've seen this early in our careers, and we've seen this in the body of working with clients. And when we have these conversations many times, everybody's aligned with the strategy. Sorry, I was going to pound on my desk. Sorry for those of you with my microphone right here. We're all aligned with the strategy. That's awesome. That's really cool. But alignment is purpose, values, and action. For the sake of what?
Yeah.
What are the values? And then what actions are we taking together? How do we co-create those actions? So we're all moving together in a coordinated manner. Not to tease out, sometime we'll tell you about our definition of leadership.
Yeah.
So,
but a key piece of it is co-creating coordinated movement. You're not going to be doing this by yourself. If you try to do this by yourself, which is what a lot of leaders think that they have to do,
can't do it.
And then we start blaming people because they didn't follow. You want to co-create in a way that people kind of, and this is where that for the sake of what comes into play. You tap into soul. For the sake of what is this meaningful to you? Why would this be important? The soul wants to express itself as fully and as fulsomely as it possibly can. And that looks different for every business. It looks different for every team. How do we express who we are? And all of the glory that promises. That's what we want to be able to tap into. That's where aliveness and creativity and innovation come into play.
Right. Very much so. So excellence, genius, soul. Complexity. So this is just briefly around complexity, because we still more to talk about. But complexity, when we think about that and complexity, when we can predict what we use as traditional control, that traditional control no longer scales with complexity. You can't scale that. In other words, is what you used to do, you can't no longer do. What you did from those habits, from those methods, from those processes, those frameworks now create drag.
Yep.
And things get heavy, they go slower.
Yeah. This is the way we've always done it. You'll hear that. We've always done it this way. Why do you want to try and change that? When I was part of an SAP rollout, with a large client, SAP, we're changing processes. We're basically changing everything that, from a process perspective, everything is done in the organization. And people get really comfortable with doing the way that we've always done. And when you take a system-wide approach to change, which was what SAP was designed to do, let's integrate and streamline.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we start changing all kinds of stuff. Relationships get perturbed. So the question here is mostly about, what's the performance lever? It's about alignment. It's about getting people on board in a way that direction makes sense from where I'm at, because it's important to me. So how do I align my actions with my behaviors, with my thinking, with my speaking? That's what we want to lock in. That alignment is the performance lever. That's what we look to create there.
Yeah. So many times I always say this generally when we talk about that SAP implementation. A lot of organizations are very comfortable putting lipstick on a pig.
Oh yeah.
This is how we always done it. So can you make it look like this, please? So we digress.
We digress. Got a lot of stuff to talk about here.
Yeah. So just quickly on this slide, when you are focused on introducing structures, and we've talked a little bit about trust, we've talked about clarity, we've talked about the organization, we talked about growth and the people, and aligning your accountability, three things occur, right? Alignment replaces force. Everybody's moving towards the same way. Friction doesn't stop, but everybody's moving towards the same direction. The alignment replaces force, the push, command and control. Trust replaces control. And that means that you trust you to trust them, they trust themselves, and they trust you.
Yep.
And when that occurs, accountability exists, because now we can make committed decisions to and with each other. And then coherence replaces hustle. That whole thing we were talking about early on. I've got to double down. I've got to call my wife and tell her, early in my career, boy, I made these mistakes. I'm not going to be home for dinner. What do you mean you're not going to be home for dinner?
Yeah.
You impact other areas, you impact your life, but coherence replaces hustle.
Yeah. Yep.
And you can focus on what you need to be focusing on, what you should be focusing on. And that becomes incredibly important.
Yeah, and coherence. One of the ways that coherence works in an organizational setting is it fosters interdependence. It fosters the experience of, I can't do what I'm doing here unless you bring what you bring. What you bring is absolutely crucial to what I'm actually executing on here. So that degree of interdependence, it can't be enforced, it can't be imposed. But when you begin to look at how you can design around coherence, for the sake of what? Accountability begins to take form in a different way. It begins to occupy the thinking in a different way. It's not something now that is associated with blame. It's now something that's associated with contribution.
Right.
And that's a big distinction that comes into play here. When you can leap that chasm, accountability does not mean you're open to blame. It means you're now locked into something here that is meaningful to you, and you're willing to, the interesting word here, we've all heard this, go out on a limb. I'm going to go out on a limb with this. And this metaphor comes to mind of, the birds, kind of flying out there, and you see a bird, and every one of us has seen this. We see a bird land on this little tiny thin branch, this little limb that's kind of hanging out there. The bird lands and the limb bounces a little bit and the bird is just kind of there. The question here has to do with, what is the bird trusting? The bird is actually not trusting the limb. The bird is trusting its wings.
Yeah.
And if you can get people to trust their wings, you will have people taking appropriate risks, going out on limbs that may break, but they are able to handle the consequence of that decision. And you learn and grow from that. That's that challenge, that work from a leadership perspective, to be able to get that in place in your organization is a big deal. Design replaces reaction in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. So important. So when you do these things, so what the reason there's this question, what becomes possible? This is one of the things, and we talk about this, and I love this statement that we talk about, moving possibility into reality.
Yep. That's what a leader does. They move possibility into reality. And the mid ground there has to do with probability. Possibility moves into probability. And then management, the activity of management, which is different than leadership. The activity of management takes it over. And now let's figure out tactically how we're going to go about doing this. That's the executional piece.
Yeah.
And that turns it into a reality. Your job as a leader is to shine the light on possibilities.
Right. And I just love that. When that happens, you'll put, it's funny, because when you get into that spot, when and you start to recover those things, your leaders, we talked originally about that feeling of heavy. I've had several conversations this week with leaders where things are heavy. And we've got a couple tomorrow, Blaine, with where things are heavy. And you will find that you regain your energy. What becomes possible through alignment and all of it, your energy changes. Your energy changes.
Yep. Possibility is invigorating. People get lit up about possibility. What if? What if? Could
Yeah.
we really? And you see the light go on in their eyes. When you can tap into that, and when you can invite people to tap into that, that's where that "for the sake of what" starts to click in. What matters here?
Right.
I mean, really, that's a possibility. That really matters to me. What do I get to have, do, or be that I wouldn't get to have, do, or be if we didn't go in that direction? That's
Mhm.
personal. I can't tell you what that is, but I can invite you to explore it. That begins to create movement.
Yeah.
Leaders are always causing movement. Always.
That's the number one job. And
Yep.
just to kind of recap the thought, right? Then when that occurs, right? Speed comes from the speed picks up because if there's coherence, which we talked about, urgency diminishes, calm becomes a leadership advantage. You're leading from a calm place.
Mhm.
Take a breath, leaders, and just close your eyes for a second and envision when was the last time you led from a calm place?
Yeah.
Because things happen. And then your team moves with confidence because you're leading from a calm place. You have a leadership advantage.
Emotions are contagious. Feelings are contagious. Energy is contagious. Calm is an
Oh, yeah.
energetic state. And when things are going to hell in a handbasket, when everybody's looking around going, "Oh my God, we're going to die," your presence, this is influence. Your presence makes a big difference to how you can calm the waters enough for a different responsiveness to be present rather than reactivity. Because the whole purpose of reactivity, to when I react to stimulus, what's going on there is my concern is safety. My concern is getting back to an equilibrium state. And equilibrium in that kind of a context has to do with the way it always was.
Right.
I want to be able to have a very thoughtful
Yes.
response to what we're doing that moves us closer to that possibility. It may not, it won't keep us stuck where we were. Where we were was comfortable. The idea of responsiveness is not safety and equilibrium as much as it is momentum and movement towards that desired outcome.
Yeah.
And how you set that up makes a difference. Calmly is a good way to do that. It doesn't mean there's no urgency.
No,
Yeah.
it's funny you mentioned that. A lot of times calm is misconfused with Eeyore.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. How are you? I'm not dead yet.
I'm not dead yet. Nope.
I'm not dead yet.
So we talked about friction a little bit earlier. Friction is when friction is managed, and again, I'm going to invite you here as you're listening here to play with different words for friction. Again, resistance, conflict. I mean, those sorts of things kind of come into mind. They're kind of thought of in the same way.
Sure.
Basically, what you get is friction. And as Doland mentioned earlier, you can't move unless you've got friction. I mean, try and walk across a sheet of ice, and if you don't have friction, you're going to be like Bambi, on that sheet of ice just twirling around as Thumper's pushing him. Conflict is important in an organization. And from a leadership perspective, most of the leaders that I've worked with, and I know that this is true for you because we've talked about it, do not like conflict. They just assume step into it. It's kind of,
no.
Conflict is needed in an organizational setting. And here's one way to think about this. And if you're effective as a leader, you're going to be playing with this a lot. When you rub your hands together, friction is going on here, and you start to notice that the hands start to warm up. Friction generates heat. And when we're talking about managing friction, we're talking about managing the heat that is present when conflicting ideas and conflicting points of view and conflicting preferences start to come into play here. Heat will clean things out that don't belong there any longer. And
Right.
friction, heat will generate light. And light can illuminate different pathways that we may not have noticed before. So we want to be able to judiciously encourage appropriate friction in the system because it unlocks capacity that has been not tapped into. Goodness.
Let you catch up there for a second.
Yeah, thank you. As I start choking on things here.
Yep.
So that's what we're looking to here. Performance becomes sustainable that way, and you're not slowing down. You're actually illuminating. You're developing different muscles.
That's so important. So what happens? So what we've been taught, what we've really been focusing on are three lenses. And when these aren't three frameworks, we're going to be really clear. These aren't three frameworks. There's a lot of frameworks. There's a lot of frameworks. But these are three lenses. And each one of the lenses here, they address a different dimension of your business. Before we were talking about your team, growth, communication, trust, clarity, consistency, confidence. So when we're focused on this, it does take all of these three together in order to lead at a higher level. And that's what, as a leader, we generally, as most every leader I've ever talked to, aspire to. When they recognize there's a pain or a feeling, they're aspiring to lead at a higher level. I want to do more, but I don't want it to feel the same.
Yep.
And so what we've been talking about are three things: leadership mindset, compassionate capitalism, and empowerment operating system. And we'll get into details on each of these as we go.
Yeah. So the mindset piece, just to kind of pop this along here, we got 8 minutes left in the show. We want to be mindful of time.
We got
it. Leadership mindset. Yeah. Why don't you take this one? I'll take the compassionate capitalism one.
All right, I'll go quick. So when we think of leadership mindset, and you have all read the slide faster than I can read it to you, but the important thing is that mindset shapes how we interpret. It is how we think. And you hear a lot of words. You hear paradigms. I could go into a lot more words around mindset. But one of the most important things with mindset is based on how you interpret. It sets that meaning, and meaning is formed before action is taken. I'll say it again. Meaning is formed before action is taken. It's really important. So mindset is that piece that, from a leader's perspective, and those who lead in your organization and those who follow in your organization, interprets pressure and complexity, and it sets up that mechanism with that meaning. Meaning is formed before action is taken. And mindset plays that role. So mindset shapes our decision, and it shapes everything downstream.
And so when we think about mindset, here's one way to, we're looking at changing thinking. That's what a shift in mindset is, a shift in thinking. And one of the ways that we talk about this has to do with the nature of what's the purpose of business. Yeah, the purpose of business, quite simply, is not to make a profit. That is not the purpose of business. You're going to make a profit. You have to make a profit to stay in business. But the purpose of profit is to uplift the experience of being alive on this planet. And if your product or service is uplifting, where it actually, there's a delight component to it. I feel good about who I am because I bought this product or, access that service. I'm going to beat a path to your door. I'm going to keep showing back up. Compassionate capitalism aligns performance with people so that growth does not extract more from people, from customers, from clients, from subscribers, from stakeholders, from vendors, than it creates. There has to be this uplift that goes on. And that's why we call this compassionate capitalism. Compassion and, it's almost an oxymoron. Compassion and capitalism. And people look around at capitalism today and they go, where's the man? That's oil and water. Are you crazy? Business taking responsibility for the whole, for the quality of life on the planet, requires compassion. From a leadership perspective, When you're operating a compassionately capitalistic company, I will guarantee you, you are making incredibly difficult choices because the decisions you make, the choice that you make has a ripple. And you start accounting for 6, 7, 8 levels out on that decision, and you go, oops, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we should do something a little different, because that consequence is not going to serve that constituency particularly well. That's what a compassionate leader does in a compassionate organization. In the medical field, doctors will take something called the Hippocratic Oath. Very brief version of that is, first, do no harm. So when you're thinking about how you make decisions and run your business, first, do no harm. Now, that is real easy to talk about. I will guarantee you, if you're willing to sign on to that, it will be the most difficult job you've ever undertaken as a leader in an organization. Compassionate capitalism is what that's about. And it moves us into an empowerment operating system.
In short, an empowerment operating system, it turns intent into consistent action at scale. One of the challenges, I think, as a leader is when you think about, and empowerment's a big word. Empowerment can mean many, many, many kinds of things. But when we think about it, empowerment isn't something that you embed in your culture. Empowerment is not culture, it's a design.
Yeah.
It's a component. Culture's there, but it is not the culture, it is the design. And when you have that structure and you have an empowerment structure, you turn that intention, that compassionate capitalism, and the other components that we've talked about into consistent action. And that consistent action then enables you to move forward, constrain your leadership, and empower your team with autonomy, with trust, with growth. And that's where innovation begins to really blossom and really occur, the use of imagination inside of the body of your organization. But empowerment turns intent into consistent action.
Consistent, and that's the key, consistent action. That's what we want to be able to work with here.
Critical, so important.
And one of the ways that you do that has to do with, this whole notion of integration. I mean, just kind of, there's all these disparate parts that go on. Organizations are complex. Leadership effectiveness isn't additive in the sense that you're just bolting things on. There's an integration that has to occur here. And in the 100 years that we've got together in this leadership development field, I'll just speak for myself here. I've heard ad nauseum, just leverage your strengths. Leverage your strengths.
Oh boy.
Leverage your strengths. Just, if you're just focusing on one domain, that focus will not compensate for absence in another domain. It will eventually catch up to you and it will bite you in the tush. It will. So you want to be noticing, and you may not develop this in yourself, but you want to be hiring people, perhaps bringing people onto the team that will compensate for that area that is, a little gray zone for me. Mm-hmm. It's integrative. You're integrating it into your style. You're not bolting something else on and going, well, that's just an add-on. No, it has to be integrated and appreciated, part of the way that we do things. And that's where that culture comes back into play here. Leadership effectiveness is integrative. You are an integrated whole. And we talk about leadership authenticity. One of the ways that we actually leverage that is a recognition of, okay, this is good, this doesn't work so well. Let me compensate, find a way to handle that. Whether bringing somebody else in, or maybe I go to school again.
Pull one of the 4 levers. Another training. So leaders, this is where, Blaine, we want to encourage you, and we're broadcasting live over StreamYard onto a bunch of different places. And so it's hard for us to see comments and see some of the things. So wherever you are, just take a pause when we're done. Take a pause before you move on to your next task and reflect back on what's leadership costing you.
Yeah, the current way that you're working it.
Yeah, and just reflect back on that and take 30 seconds. Don't take any longer than that, because if you You're going to overthink it. And just self-assess that and give yourself that opportunity to think about, where is it that I feel heavy? Because we've talked about a lot of stuff, to use another technical term. But take that moment. That's where this you use. I love the word that I have a hard time with, integrative. This is where it becomes integrative. This is where it becomes integrative. Then do the next step. Leaders cause movement. The first place you cause movement is with yourself. So our ask and homework assignment is go stop for 30 seconds.
Yep. And we're going to wrap this up here. This has not been a pitch. And again, we said this right at the very beginning. We aren't pitching anything. We aren't looking to have you buy anything or anything at all here. What we want to do is begin to, we want you to start to question. Questions are more important than answers. They really are. They're more important than answers. So practice thinking about things in a different way. And hopefully what we've been able to do is position what we've just talked about here in the last hour as a mirror, so that you can look at some of the stuff that we talked about, bounce it back and go, okay, where does this fit for me? What am I seeing in that mirror that is applicable to who I am, what I'm doing, and how I'm leading?
Right.
That's what we want to be able to look at.
Right.
That's the whole intent here.
Well said.
Soul of business isn't about doing more. It's about leading from who you become. Your system is maturing. It's migrating. It's in a seasonality. You may be in summer, fall, winter, or spring, but just know that the demand on your leadership will change. It can't not change because your organization is alive. It's becoming something. And if you aren't becoming in the process, you're going to be the bottleneck. Not about you doing more. It's about you thinking differently. It's about you beginning to recognize patterns, doing things a little differently in the way that you've always done them. That's what we're looking to achieve here. And that's what we're hoping that this has been able to do, is create some questions in your mind. So we would be remiss, again, this isn't a pitch, but if you want to talk more about this, this was an abstraction. Everything that we talked about here, it was a big, this was a kind of, okay, where's the application here? No, it was intentionally abstract because we want to create questions as opposed to certainty. Certainty will stop the process. Anytime you're certain about something, you stop looking. We want you to continue looking, continue exploring, lift under the covers. And one of the ways that we can facilitate that is just have a conversation with us. If you're open to it, we're available. There is no charge to talk to us. We're old enough now that we don't really need to charge for conversation.
Right. It changes the value of the outcome.
It does. So if you want to get a hold of us, here's a couple of ways that you can do that. The QR code, I'm going to just kind of enlarge this for just a moment. But you can go to the QR code and just say, okay, who are these guys and why should I pay attention? So that's what we want to be able to look at here. So there's the cool thing. You can also go to that URL and there's on that URL, there's a calendar, and you can book. And both of these, both the QR code as well as the URL are access to our booking calendars. And basically it's just an invitation to set up a 20-minute conversation with us. That's all it is. And we'll explore with you what it is that you're up to, what it is that's going on in terms of your leadership.
Right.
That's what we're going to invite you to do. And we want to thank you for listening. We're about 4 minutes over the prescribed time, but that's okay. It's close enough.
This close. We were this close. This close. All right.
Thank you for listening.
Gratitude for everybody who took time, and for those who will watch it who didn't see it at this point. But gratitude for all of you. And thank you for being with us. And we look forward to having a chat with you.
We greatly appreciate the opportunity to share with you guys.
Yeah.
Take care.